Hi, everyone. I'm Samira Sain. I'm the New York Regional Director for Common Sense. We're the organization that helps with digital well-being for children and families in an age of rapidly changing technology. We provide resources for parents and educators, and during this time, Common Sense's website has been set up specifically to help parents find, the right kind of information they need during this unusual time. Um, this is a Common Sense Conversation with Dr. Mark Bertin. He's an MD and a developmental pediatrician and author of How Children Thrive, Mindful Parenting and for ADHD and other books. We do want to remind you that we're not providing medical advice and specifics, but rather tips and tools on how to stay healthy and mindful as we have a very rapidly changing relationship with technology. Mark, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right now. I'm staying healthy for the moment. So how are you doing?
Oh, okay. We all have our challenges. We're all trying to work and everyone's home and the kids are home, but, doing okay for the most part. We're healthy right now, which is a great thing. I just wanted to know, how are you handling, as a developmental doctor, how are you handling your own relationship with technology right now?
Well, I think we're all just in kind of triage mode right now a little bit and trying to figure what makes sense. And online learning for most kids is a pretty intense challenge, and we're trying to keep our families together and kind of keep everyone resilient and strong. So, I don't think there's a clean answer as much as to say that we're all trying to be more flexible than usual probably and use technology wisely. And I think that's really what it comes down to for me. I've been talking to lots of families, and clearly the rules are going to bend and parents have stuff to get done. And, the reality is technology is just a tool and we can use it well. So what I've been trying to talk to families about is really prioritizing in the big picture what keeps families resilient and together, recognizing that isn't like a big blackout where we can go into total chaos mode for a few days and that's really probably going to be fine. Really, this is going to last a while, so we want to come back to healthy routines and resilience as quickly as we can, including around screens, even though the rules are definitely going to be different than normal life.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. My own children, I know that it's happening across the board, is saying, well, you're spending so much time on technology, so I have to remind myself to relax the rules. But are there any ways we can make that, even that technology time? I know Common Sense has great resources, but as a developmental doctor and
Well,
psychiatrist, do you have any advice?
well, I think there's a big premise here to start with, which is just that kids are gonna, when you talk about screen time, kids are gonna get back. We'll just get them back into the normal life one way or the other. Like, I don't want anyone to be overly stressed about it. We're all just doing our best. At the same time, most of us parents recognize that when our kids have kind of open-ended, endless screen time, they end up pretty wound up and off relatively soon. It's a short-term solution, and I think it's going to kick back on most families if it's totally open-ended. So I think we have to look at screen time and really kind of back into what works for us as families. One of the things I do separate from separate from this crisis specifically sometimes is talk to families about prioritizing what you think is going to help your family be resilient first. So scheduling in family time and outdoor time and maybe some exercise and mindfulness practice that's familiar to your family. And then even around technology, looking at, not all technology time is created equal. So being on Zoom or FaceTime with friends, that's not the same as just like TV time and game time. So schedule some of that. And then, educational time. Well, clearly, if you're doing something educational for school specifically, that doesn't count as your screen time either right now.
Yeah.
And once you've kind of got that whole, schedule in essence filled out, then what you, I think, want to be doing at almost any age is still setting boundaries around screens, because otherwise it's just kids won't entertain themselves if they know screens are available quite often. And like I suggested, I think, it's pretty common that kids just, they're not at their best when they've been on screen too long. So then you have to define kind of for yourself, how much screen time is okay in my household. There's no strict rule to it, but your kids are going to obsess over it less if the rules are pretty concrete. So even if it's different than real life or the rest of life, concrete helps kids obsess over it less. It helps define it for you, and then use it as a tool. So, if it's going to be an hour before dinner, make sure you set it up that way so that you can get dinner on the table. If you have work to get done, define that block of time so it's not open-ended. And my sense of things is that for most families, those types of consistent routines are going to, help both parents and kids feel better over the upcoming weeks.
Yes, I agree. And there's a new realm of, like, we're all entering this new realm of being parent educators and educators.
Right.
So how, I mean, obviously the first few weeks are not going to go well. Are there any tips? It's like, we're
Right.
trying to, get on our Zoom calls for work or, go out and do that bit of shopping when the stores are open early, but at the same time, get the kids ready for school. And how do we manage our expectations? And developmentally, let's do it 0 to 6. Shall we do 7 to 12, and then high schoolers? Like, how do you see that working out, just from a parent's point of view, and then we'll take it from the educator's point of view?
Well, that's a lot of information to cover. So I'll try to organize and keep it concise. But I think the biggest thing to start with is that we're not educators, and that kids have had to miss school, generationally for all sorts of reasons. And in the long run, all we can do is create enough structure to try to keep our kids learning while recognizing that they're all going to need some catch up probably. And that's, and it's going to be something we all have to adapt to. The school system has to adapt to. But the pressure, unless we're actually, teachers ourselves or, really are going to be there through the whole day to try to, make this experience the same as being in school, it's probably not realistic or necessary. I think you just want to let go of perfection and recognize we're all trying to do our best right now. And parents got their own work to do, and we have households to run, and we have all these different things going on. So that, in the end, it comes down to setting up structure that helps kids be more successful, which I'll touch on next, but without expecting it to be the same as school. Right. And there's another layer you want to add to it, which is just that the reality is that computers are inherently distracting, and online learning is fairly unproven. So, to expect it to go as well as, an actual adult in a classroom, isn't likely. I think it's, which isn't to say we shouldn't all try to help our kids learn. It's just, be realistic about it. And what that's going to look like in different age groups is different. And you said to break it up by different ages. Well, in really young kids, and we did a different webinar with a different group last night. In kids in the under 6 group, they're not really supposed to be doing a lot of learning yet. Most of the research says, and from a developmental point of view, that age group just needs a lot of play and a lot of exposure to books and language and a lot of life experience and social experience, which is hard right now.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be overly caught up in more than just that kind of routine learning. Basically a lot of picture books and exposure to the alphabet is probably, even though our schools are often pushing for more younger, that's not really what's developmentally needed. And so this can be a step back in a way to something that's more natural and almost healthy in that group. However, still recognizing that as parents, if you want to get things done, you might want to set up a little bit of like a preschool schedule almost. Just, the more scheduling and routine, I think, is reassuring to kids and also will help us get things done. So even in that age group, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's reassuring to adults too, to have, for all, and children are feeding off of our own kind of anxieties or expectations. And I guess that's, it's part of the relationship, if you will. We're trying to get them to brush their teeth and get to bed and also get to class. And sometimes some schools are requiring uniforms, if you will. And do you think that's they're like
online uniforms? I haven't heard that yet. But
we have schools that are saying come with your jacket and tie, which is fine. That's their way.
I guess. I mean, everyone's recommendation that I've read and I agree is, get up, get dressed, brush your teeth. Don't get into the lying in front of the computer pajama routine for adults or kids.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's a little bit. It isn't exactly the question you asked me, but certainly anything we can do as adults to keep ourselves resilient. That's going to help our kids profoundly.
Yeah.
There's an old story that that Thich Nhat Hanh actually, who's a Buddhist teacher, says that when he was working with refugees He said that he discovered over time that there were rafts that people were coming into that just fell into chaos, and then there were rafts with it. When a single person stayed calm, the whole raft stayed calm. When
Wow.
a single person knew what to do, the whole raft, knew what to do. And as parents, we want to start sometimes with, we can't tell our kids exactly how to manage their own stress because that's not something you learn from, being told. It's a lot about being resilient ourselves when we're able. And so for the whole family, including ourselves, sticking to a little bit of a sleep routine and making sure we exercise and trying to carve out time. I mean, this is triage. I'm not saying that everyone's gonna have lots of time for these things, but having time for our own friends, whatever keeps us strong will help our kids stay strong.
That's just very true. And just in terms of this news cycle that we're all in, there's so much news out there, and Common Sense has great resources for educators, and we have a new news literacy hub that's available. But, we all find ourselves slipping into this constant checking of the news. And I guess our kids are doing it too, because the older children are getting the news via social
Mm.
media, etc. And while we're all trying to use the right tools and tips, what should we, I mean, what's the ideal amount of news time, or is there no ideal amount? Is it because the more
Uh,
news you watch is
I have an opinion on that, but I don't know if it's, I think the ideal amount of news time, even before this crisis, is just enough to stay informed and then turn it off.
enough.
Because everything about the news cycle is inflammatory and stress producing and ramped up our uncertainty. And I think, clearly we better be well informed right now to keep up with everything that's going on. But, I would encourage people to stick to, as little as possible, because we have this compulsion often to just keep looking, keep digging, it's not going to change anything really. And often it's just ramping up our anxiety. And with kids, the same thing goes. And the younger they get, the more we want to protect them from the constant assaults of the news. We want to be honest and keep it concrete and simple in terms of, what's actually going on. Thankfully, especially in kids, we can reassure them that for the most part, their health doesn't seem to be particularly at risk around this. A lot of what's going on is about protecting the community, which is actually a nice message for kids to hear. Um, and um, and we really do want to shield them as much as possible, not have the news on in the background. You never know whether the next thing on the news is going to be
That's true.
totally inflammatory.
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
so I want to, I think that's how I would approach the news. That's how I'm trying to approach it myself, is just like, check in the morning, check in at night. I can guarantee you if something huge happens, some friend of mine is going to text me. Like, I don't need to be, I don't need to be immersing myself in it all day long.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I want to say thank you. I know you're super busy, but you've given us some great tips, and we'd like to check in with you every few weeks because, things change day by day.
Yes.
It's a remarkable time, and hopefully we can all look back on this time, stay healthy, stay safe, and be mindful of this time and make the best use of it, if we will. But thank you for taking the time.
Sure. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks.